This is the Unstarving Musicians podcast. I'm your host, Rabanzo. This podcast features conversations with me and indie music artists. Conversations intended to help other indie musicians be better at marketing, business, the creative process, and all the other things that empower us to do more of what we love. Make music. Hey there, welcome to episode number 105. This is Rabanzo. This is an in-between-isode, as one of my podcaster idols, Tim Ferriss, would say of his own in-between things. I'm traveling today. I've been traveling for a few days. I'm in Greve in Italy. It's an amazing, amazing town that a friend recommended, and I'm here with my wife. We're having a fantastic time. It's wine country, the weather's beautiful, and life is beautiful. In this episode, it's something a little different. As I said, I am going to present to you the Unstarving Musician's Guide, chapters 1 and 2, and I'm also going to go through some listener emails. Before that, would you like to support this podcast? You can do so by joining the Unstarving Musician community. Just go to unstarvingmusician.com and join right there on the homepage. If you're an independent musician, you will be glad you joined because I share stuff you can use in your music journey. And it all comes from the combined experience of the hundreds of musicians I've talked to as part of this Unstarving Musician project, and a little bit of my own experience as well. And that's all free just for being a part of the community. Plus, you'll get tidbits about the latest episodes of this podcast and a free gift from me, which I know you'll enjoy. You can also support the podcast by purchasing a copy of the Unstarving Musician's Guide. It's available at Amazon and wherever fine ebooks are sold. All right, let's do reader questions. So I got one from Rick most recently, who said, I believe it was Mike Dawson who mentioned you in an interview. Well, I don't know if I read that right, but if Mike Dawson mentioned me in an interview, I'm honored. Mike he was in episode 1, I believe, of this podcast, 125, maybe 50. Great guy, managing editor at Modern Drummer, fine musician, and just a wonderful guy. But anyway, Rick says he's an elder dude. I'm not even going to mention his age, but he played drums when he was pretty young and didn't take lessons at first. But as he got a little older, he started to work, let life get away with him, or life, ran away with his time. But he did get into fly fishing. Where does this relate? Well, it relates. Just bear with me. He got into fly fishing and fly tying and taught it for over 30 years. Then he started playing guitar, but he was drawn back to drums. He decided to start back up again. I guess he'd set it down for a while. And he's had a couple of drum teachers. Eventually decided to go with a guy who's a founding member of Big Sugar. And he's been playing for a while. He's also picked up bass he says, to improve his drumming. He's working on building a small studio. And he was hoping to find some decent people to work with. He says at my age, it isn't easy to find or start a band. Egos and attitudes seem to be a problem. Doing this project might help, he says with a question mark. Well, you know what? I think, the project would certainly help. It broadens it broadens your skill sets and the interest that others will have in you. But you know what? At your age, at my age, at anybody's age, egos can run crazy. He goes on to say, I'm open to any and all suggestions that you have to get me an opportunity to play with people that don't have a lot of baggage. Rick, I have baggage. You might have baggage. A lot of people have baggage. I've had the pleasure, as you hopefully have, you, Rick, and those of you listening have had the pleasure of playing with people who don't appear to have any baggage at all. Everyone's got some, but some people just wear it on their sleeves. But, I guess it's all about deciding who you want to play with and trying to attract the best and repel the rest. As my friend, mentor, Chris Ducker always says, attract the best and repel the rest. But just, your time is precious. You don't have that much time, man. Spend it with people that you enjoy spending time with. That's my best advice. And, I think no matter your age, meeting people is key. And one of the best ways I've been reminded over the many conversations I've had is to go out to open mics and blues jams and participate, play, sign up, get involved a little bit. You will meet some great people. Hopefully you have one in your town. There have been repeated stories from me and others on this podcast about how they've met people at at open mics and blues, things like blues jams, maybe other genre jams. I've done some that are called pro jams that focus on rock and pop. A great way to meet musicians, like-minded people, not so like-minded people, people with baggage, people who don't have baggage. But the key is, to kind of expand your network a little bit until you find the right people. So Rick, I wish you luck, and I hope that helps. I got another email from a guy named Rick, and realized as I was going through it, it's the same Rick. Rick, I really appreciate you. Rick has been responding. He's a member of the community, and he's been responding to some emails that I've sent out, a couple of things that have been kind of everyone gets. And he opens this second one with, I totally disagree with your friend's comment about staying ahead of the student. In one email I mentioned, I ask new members if they teach, and the underlying theme of that email was to encourage those of you who do teach, if you're not already doing so, to look at teaching online. And my friend who I mentioned in the email at the time I wrote that was not teaching online. I'm not sure if he is today. But as many of you know, if you're teachers or have been for any length of time, YouTube has really changed the landscape of teaching. So again, that's all. Teaching is all about relationships too, obviously, and being online will help you. Is one of the best ways to expand your relationships. And anyway, my friend had said something when he was encouraging me to start teaching drums, or asking me if I'd ever considered it, and I was like, no, I have always thought of myself I'd be a bit of a disservice because my music reading skills are not great. I just thought I'd personally feel like I'd be doing a disservice. But my friend said, all you have to do is stay one step ahead, one lesson ahead of your student. And I was like, well, yeah, I guess that's true to a degree. But this is what Rick disagreed with. But I think, Rick, you maybe took it a little out of context. Not hard to do so. Rick had said in a nutshell that people who teach just for money are doing it wrong, and I agree, and I know my friend would agree. My friend, who I mentioned, and I've told Rick as much in an email correspondence with him, that my friend loves teaching. We've talked about it, and he really does. He teaches young students, older students, and he has kind of an interesting story, which if you're part of the community, you can learn a little bit about, and if you want to know more about, you can obviously just email me to hear a little bit about his journey. But Rick, I agree with you. And finding the right teacher or being the right teacher is all about your personal taste. And finding a good teacher is just like finding a good bandmate, isn't it? You got to find somebody that speaks to you and somebody that I guess listens and isn't just, wanting to show you their chops. Like Rick said, that's no fun. Thanks, Rick, for both of those emails. I really appreciate it. I always get emails from another guy named Dave DeCarian. He's actually a friend of mine from the San Francisco Bay Area. Most recently, Dave said, I read with interest your interview with Notel and concluded it does not apply to me. It seems you have a talent for the takeaways to apply, and I'm still waiting for that ingredient. Nice podcast otherwise. Thanks, Dave. I know Dave is a supporter of the podcast, and he's always been a supporter of my musicality and musicianship, and I really appreciate him for that. We have a lot of mutual friends, musician friends. And I just asked Dave, as I will ask to all of you, what is it that you would like me to ask my guests so that things that would apply to you? Anyway, my conversations individually don't apply to everyone, but I think they're pretty cool, mostly because my guests are so cool. Dave, thanks for the email. I really appreciate it, but do let me know what you would like, the types of questions you would like me to ask guests, the things that you are interested in learning about, because I am interested in knowing. All right, before we get to chapters 1 and 2, I got to tell you about Bandzoogle. From garage bands to Grammy winners, Bandzoogle powers websites for thousands of musicians around the world. Their easy-to-use system will get you online in minutes. They have a lot of mobile-friendly templates to help you customize and design your site. It's built for musicians by musicians. Check this out. Here are some of the features Bandzoogle has. They have a merch and download store feature to help you sell and music and merchandise commission-free right on your website. They also have a tour calendar to help you promote your shows and sell tickets commission-free. Mailing list tools to grow your fan list and send professional-looking emails and newsletters. That one's an important one, isn't it? Integrations to pull in content from all of your socials. And live support from a musician-friendly team 7 days a week. Plans start at just $8.29 a month, and that includes hosting and your own free custom domain name. Go to bandzoogle.com to start a 30-day free trial. Use the promo code Robonzo, that's ROBONZO, to get 15% off the first year of any subscription. That's bandzoogle.com, promo code Robonzo, to build your artist website today. Now then, the Unstarving Musician's Guide to Getting Paid Gigs, Chapters 1 and 2. This book is based on personal experience and time spent talking to other musicians. While I was living in Dallas, Fort Worth, and the San Francisco Bay Area, for those of you who don't know, I fairly easily reached a point of being able to gig at will, when, where, and with whom I wanted, and got paid doing it. Now I was just a weekend warrior, a part-time musician, as I pretty much have been most of my life, mostly playing in cover bands, often, however, playing in original projects. But I know these principles are transferable to original artists, songwriters, full-time musicians, actors, visual artists. I'm telling you, it works. The entire book was available as a standalone podcast, but I'm moving it here just for you guys. Now, here in a series of in-between episodes, that's where you're going to find it moving forward. These recordings and those of the 10 chapters that followed were my very first foray into podcasting. I did them from my first abode in Panama. Less than ideal acoustics in that place. I actually made a tent. I reminded myself of a little, of myself as a young child. I built a tent. I was thinking, I built a fort here to record in to get the acoustics. It sounds pretty good, but I get a kick out of myself, hearing myself, that is, then and now, or now and then. Okay, here's me and a partial narration of the Unstarving Musician's Guide to Getting Paid Gigs. Forward. My life outside of music. There have been times in my life when I'd wished that I'd chosen the path of being a musician first, i.e., as a full-time vocation. Alas, it was not to be my journey. Fortunately, I've still had the joy of performing in some great music venues with a fantastic host of musicians. This joy is still a part of my life. There are fewer views more pleasing than the ones that come with a backdrop made up of Northern California sky as seen from my drum throne. Most of my professional time has been spent in technology and marketing. These days I support myself as a marketing professional. When I set out to write this book, I was sure that my readers would be people who were more or less like me, playing music part-time and doing it at a very local level. I assumed they'd be at a professional or semi-pro level, whereby they not only sought out good gigs, but also decent pay for their time. Sometime between the first and last chapters of this book, I came to realize that there's a much bigger audience at large. There are full-time musicians, songwriters, and even parents who promote and support the musical endeavors of their children. There are touring musicians, session musicians, and musicians in many genres, all of whom deal with a unique set of challenges. This book is the beginning of what has the potential to become a series of books that speak to musicians from all walks of life. May it speak to you as well. Introduction. If you love doing something, you should never stop doing it. Life has ingrained this in me. I'm a drummer and vocalist, and I used to say that I've been playing off and on since I was 13. There have been a few times in my life when I've stopped playing for up to a year at a time. I've been playing steady for the past 15 years. For most of those years, I've been a gigging musician. It's not been my full-time thing, but something that brings me much joy, grocery money, and the means to keep myself in quality gear. Performing also helped me meet cute girls, and ultimately my loving wife. Most of my playing has been in cover bands. However, I know that many of the same lessons I've learned and principles I've applied are also relevant for original artists. While I predominantly perform with cover bands today, I do also gig with original bands and artists from time to time. In mid-December of 2013, I realized that I'd accomplished something kind of special. That I had one or more gigs already booked for every month of the following year, 2014. The same thing happened the next year. It occurred to me that many of my musician friends had trouble getting venues to give them the time of day, much less book their band. The next thought I had was, I bet some of my musician friends would like to know how I did this. If that turned out to be true, surely there are other musicians that would like to hear or read my story. This book is about how it happened. It's also about how I've been able to keep my gig calendar as full as I want. In the pages ahead, I'll tell you how it all happened and lay out the best advice I have to offer. I'm also going to share some of the best advice that my peers have to offer and give you tips and actions to follow that will help you get more paid gigs. Should you read this book? You may be able to decide by the end of this paragraph. I am not a career musician, although the business of music is becoming a bigger and bigger part of my life. I regularly perform with great local bands and have a great time doing it. Performing live is my zen. At the time of this writing, one of my gigs is with a career musician. He works at it a heck of a lot harder than I do, but I've been lucky to have been hired by this person and have learned quite a bit from him. If you're in a cover band, and especially if performing is a part-time thing for you, then read on. If you're in a cover band that's just part of your full-time music career, I still recommend reading on. More importantly, if you're facing challenges getting the gigs you want, I'm confident that you'll find this book to be a good read. Perspective on my music scene, then and now. Allow me to provide a bit of context. My musical endeavors as a drummer and vocalist started in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. At the time, I was surrounded by a number of super talented players. Frankly, I wasn't quite up to the skill level that many of my then peers possessed. Yet, I was frequently recruited. I had the opportunity to play with some very talented people. In '99, I moved to Northern California and had to discover an entirely new local music scene. This did not happen overnight. I gigged with some original bands and with the help of Craigslist found a cover band that more or less launched me into a personal era of local recognition. That is to say, people began to take notice of my playing and my singing. As a quick side note, if you have any vocal talent whatsoever, I highly encourage you to nurture that talent. I read in Eric Clapton's biography that a friend once told him something to the effect of, "God gave you a gift, the ability to sing." This same friend told Clapton that if he didn't use his gift, he was going to lose it. My point is, if you have the gift of talent, nurture your gift. By nurture, I mean practice, learn, and grow. I haven't always been true to my gift, the abilities to play drums and sing, and I paid the price. Fortunately, it's never too late to embrace and nurture the gifts that life gives us. When I moved to San Jose in '99, I made the mistake of taking time off from playing. Over a year later, I picked up the sticks and found a thriving blues scene and a thriving live music scene in general. San Jose still has a thriving music scene, but much has changed and is forever changing. The abundance of live music venues tends to ebb and flow. I believe that this ebb and flow has driven many musicians to seek out niche opportunities. It's had that effect on me, and it's also kept me mindful of being diverse. We're not talking about extreme diversity, but a willingness to work with cover bands, original artists, and to perform varying styles of rock, pop, blues, and dance music has afforded me a great deal of opportunity. Are you open to being diverse in what you play and perform? If yes, then you've given yourself a major advantage in your ability to get the gigs you want. A couple of years into my return to performing live, there was a decline in the number of live venues in San Jose. One noteworthy change came about during the tech boom of the late 90s and 2000. At this particular time, there was an overabundance of overvalued .com companies who were willing and able to pay top dollar for lease space. Out went a number of music venues, and in came a bunch of .coms. Music venue owners couldn't compete. While .coms brought about a number of high-paying corporate gigs, it was within a matter of months that the .com .bomb bust came. Many, if not most of those .com companies disappeared, and so did many music venues. Another significant change followed when even more music venues were crushed during the mortgage meltdown that began in '08. You may have seen something similar occur in your own backyard at one time or another, and for economic conditions such as those I've described. There are other contributors to change, such as the vast choices we have in entertainment today. DJs abound, for cheap I might add. There's video entertainment, the internet, televised MMA at sports bars, smartphones, video games, etc. We have a growing number of entertainment choices today, and the choices are increasing at an incredibly rapid rate. Given this fact, it helps more than ever to sound good. It helps to be really good and entertaining, but being a good band is only part of the formula, as I'll explain in the pages ahead. It's also helpful to be aware of the fact that changes can and will occur within your live music community. It is with this knowledge that you will more easily adapt to an ever-evolving music scene. Herein lies your ability to stay on top of the gig opportunities. If you're in a market that has a somewhat depressed economy, then your challenges are different than the ones I've dealt with over the past several years. Silicon Valley, where I live, has seen high times and low times. At the time of this writing, we're experiencing another boom. I suspect the current boom will come to an abrupt end in the not-too-distant future. This will present new challenges for finding good gigs, of course. The takeaway here is that the landscape of local music is forever changing. These changes can have a big impact, both positive and negative. Think about this for a moment. Everything is changing. As a gigging musician, the landscape of your music scene is changing. I'm going to tell you how I've adapted to change and how you can do the same. This adaptation has coincided with the time I find myself in high demand as a drummer and vocalist. I get to play with talented people at some great local venues. I don't have to travel much, and I make enough money to help with the grocery bill, to indulge in a night out with my wife, and keep my drum gear in top shape. More importantly, I get to nurture my zen. And that's what I want for you. That concludes Chapter 1. Man, I sound somber. Let's move on with Chapter 2 of the Unstarving Musician's Guide to Getting Paid Gigs. Hope you're enjoying. Getting paid. Getting paid what you're worth is an exercise in two things: asking for a booking at the right price and knowing your market. Knowing your market can get a bit granular, and relationships are key here. More on that later. The markets you'll serve as a band and musician consist of a few moving parts, including what the local live music listening population wants to hear, what specific venues cater to, and the dynamic of your audience on any given night. Having a good sense of how these moving parts work together will help you deliver the most that you can for any given gig and at any given moment during a gig. Your ability to ask for the right price is dependent upon your knowing how to cater to the appropriate venue or event. For example, if you're not a dance band that plays 100% dance music, there is no point in marketing your band to a venue that is known to bring a dancing crowd. While I've done gigs with a dance band that's well known in my area, I never market my bands to the venues they play. Why? Because my bands only play a little dance music, and yes, there are venues where people go just to hang out and listen to bands. Finding the right venues. Identifying the right venues will help you get paid what you're worth, considering what your local market will bear. Here are some easy ways to zero in on the venues that you want to play. First, make a list of venues that cater to the style of music that your band plays. Here's how to find those venues. Search the web. Ask your existing venue booking contacts. Ask your musicians network. Search local print newspapers and magazines. Check out other bands online to see where they're playing. Follow bands on Facebook that cater to your tribe. You can also follow your peers by signing up for their email lists. Your savvy peers are emailing upcoming gig announcements to their fan base. One of the easiest ways to find out what bands are getting paid at a particular venue is to simply ask other bands what they're getting paid. The ability to do this assumes that you're well networked with your peers, the other bands that play the venues that you'd like to play. If you don't have relationships with other bands and musicians in your area, start making friends. Don't expect any musician to share this type of information with you if you have no relationship with them. In my particular area, there's an incestuous commingling of members among various bands. For example, I play in 2 different bands with a guitarist-singer friend. 2 other members of this same band play in a completely different band together. In addition, many of us, myself included, are frequently invited to substitute for musicians that play in other bands. This means that most of us are well connected to other gigging musicians and bands. I work with multiple bands and artists in the course of a given year. When it comes to finding out what venues are paying, it's easy to know where you stand by talking to musicians and bands that are among your friends. You may find that some bands are being paid more than your band, while others are being paid less. If you're not sure what you should be paid, give yourself a reality check by comparing your band to others. Your band may be a better group of musicians, but by virtue of your song selection or presentation, a band of lesser musicianship can easily command a considerably higher fee. A band with the right song selection can consistently draw a great crowd wherever they play. At many venues and gigs, pay is directly correlated to the draw plus sales of food and beverage, so don't fool yourself into thinking your band is worth more just because you're better musicians. Nothing could be farther from the truth. If your band doesn't draw a crowd, venues are not going to rebook you based on your stellar musicianship. I'll be the first to admit that I'm an intermediate drummer with a handful of advanced skills. I'm at a beginner level in many areas of drumming. The point of admitting this is that one doesn't have to be the best musician in town to get great gigs. Once you have a feel for what you think your band should be paid, you'll be equipped to ask for the right fee. Just remember not to ask for more than you can deliver, and be a little flexible. Here's the verbiage I most commonly use in an email or by phone when asking for a fee. We ask for, insert your price here. And by the way, your fee can include hospitality requests such as complimentary food or beverage. This means that your asking price might include something like this: a dinner and 2 beverage credits per band member. I'll likely say this again, but ask for your price and do not add verbiage like this: we're flexible and will work with your budget. Of course you want to be flexible, but you do not want to start the conversation with language that implies you're ready to negotiate. Let your booking prospect start the negotiation. The reality is that they may accept your price without making any sort of counteroffer. This is what happens in better than 90% of my dealings. Granted, I lose some gigs because my contact won't even attempt a counteroffer, but for the most part, I get the gigs at my asking price using this exact approach. To summarize your initial request for money, state your price, include hospitality requests where appropriate, do not open with language that implies you're ready to negotiate. Again, you absolutely want to be price flexible and willing to accept counteroffers, but I highly recommend that you do not start the conversation with stating as much. If the thought of this approach gives you any pause, consider this. Merchants and service providers that you deal with on a regular basis do not typically start with saying that they're flexible on that price. You too are a service provider, and yes, you want to be flexible, but you shouldn't lead with negotiating. To get gigs month after month, you're almost certainly going to depend on repeat bookings. While you want to become a pro at selling your band for the right fee, you don't necessarily want to focus on selling to match the fee of another band just because they make more money than your band does. Doing so can be problematic and self-defeating if the band you're so focused on price matching is far better than your band at pulling a crowd and marketing itself. Do your best to be realistic about what your band is worth. One good gauge is if you consistently get 0 pushback on your asking price. This might mean that you can easily raise the fee after 1 or 2 bookings. You can also get a reality check by speaking with your peers, especially the ones who will be honest with you. Where repeat gigs are concerned, price matters. You want to price such that the venue feels like they got their money's worth. Conversely, if you charge more than you deliver, you're not likely to get a repeat booking. By deliver, I mean you either brought a crowd or you held the venue's built-in foot traffic crowd for most, if not all, of your performance time. We're, of course, talking about public venues such as restaurants, bars, wine bars, clubs, etc. Delivering also means that your audience spent money on food and beverage. The venues at which you perform are in the business to make money, and your band is in the business of being a partner that helps them make money. A good friend of mine who happens to work with a very popular dance band in the San Francisco Bay Area recently said to me, "Bands are hired to make money for other businesses," and added that bands are employees for a night. By employees for a night, my friend was stating simply that as gigging musicians, we're part of the venue staff, or team if you will. I agree with this approach and might even rephrase it as bands should consider themselves partners in the hiring venue's success. If you feel that you're in something less than a partnership when working with the venues, something's not right. So price is very important. Yes, make money, but do so at a price that makes your venue happy because you delivered the goods. Pro tip: visibly making the effort to market your gig will go a long way in getting you repeat bookings. The success of any gig is measured by draw and retention. If you're playing a bar or restaurant, it's also measured by sales of food and beverage. This is an important point. A good draw with audience retention plus a fair price, your fee, will lead to repeat bookings. It's worth noting that you're not going to be able to draw everywhere you play. And it's not a bad thing to be upfront with venues where you're not likely to draw many new people. This doesn't necessarily mean that your band is not a good fit for the venue, as they may have a great draw of their own. You're still going to be expected to hold a crowd and/or drive sales. Always try to bring at least some of your fans to a venue, even if only a few. But if you find yourself playing to crickets, i.e. the venue staff, and an otherwise empty room, be a pro, have fun, and play like you mean it. Your band may play some or most of its gigs for tips, which may be a factor of the market you serve. Draw and retention still matter. This book is focused on guaranteed fee gigs versus playing for tips only, because the market that I'm in enables me to play for a guaranteed fee plus tips. Your market may be different, but most of the principles and tactics I'll discuss still apply. I would argue that in any market, if your band is capable of drawing a sizable audience, venues will pay a guarantee to book you. The better the draw, the more the venue profits. When your band helps a venue have a profitable night, your chance of getting repeat bookings are exponentially higher. It helps to keep things in perspective by realizing that while your mission may be to expose as many people as possible to the awesomeness of your band, most venues you play have a different core mission, which is to make more money for their business. Therefore, your relationship with venues should be mutually beneficial. Venues want bands as much as bands want to play them. Treat venues with mutual respect and appreciation, but by all means, set the expectation that they should do the same for you and your band. As a general rule, I don't perform at venues that aren't nice to my fellow bandmates and me. That may sound a little odd or egotistical, but we're musicians, artists, and entertainers. We by and large bring happiness to people's ears and souls. We may even help spark romance. For all of this, you deserve to be treated with kindness and appreciation. Remember that you are part of a mutually beneficial relationship. Your music helps venues thrive. What you're worth. What you're worth in a debut performance at a venue is quite possibly less than what you'll be worth in 6 to 12 months at the same venue. For example, 2 of my bands were recently hired to perform a venue for the first time. The venue's budget was less than ideal. This particular venue has a summer music season, and I had booked 3 performances during this particular season. Both bands did quite well. I'll most likely request a higher fee for the next upcoming summer season, and I'll very likely get it. This is how most of my bookings have played out over the past 3 years. A quick summary before we move on. Book and perform well. Deliver a great show. Draw and hold your audience. Support and help increase venue sales. Repeat once or twice. Ask for a raise. If by chance the venue pushes back on my request for a fee increase, I'll negotiate, and I'll probably win. I'm not necessarily the best negotiator. I'm okay, but one thing I know how to do is to ask for money with confidence, and then keep my mouth shut. I've touched on this already, and it's important, worth reiterating. What I never say is, we typically ask for $500, but we can work with you. A statement like that opens the door for negotiation, and guess who's in the driver's seat? The venue. What I do say is something like, we're asking for $800 this season. Then I wait for a response. There's an old saying in sales negotiation that goes something like, after asking for the sale, or in this case, a fee increase, the next person to speak loses. This means all I have to do is ask and then keep my mouth shut. All I have to do is ask for the money and keep my mouth shut. All I have to do is ask and shut up. Get it? I knew you did. Here's a conversation template for use in email or in-person conversation. If you know a sales pro, ask them for tips on making it even better. Hi, insert venue contact name. The band really enjoyed playing at your venue, and we received a lot of great feedback from the audience and staff. We'd love to book another date with you. We're asking, insert your asking price. That's it. Of course, you'll need to customize this to your voice and situation, but it's really that simple. Negotiating. Negotiating a higher fee can be tricky, and for some it can be very uncomfortable. Here's a scenario to consider. You've been offered a gig and return engagement. Maybe not the second booking, but perhaps the third or fourth. The venue is offering, say, $300, but you're thinking it's appropriate to ask for $400 or maybe even $500. Assuming you're ready to deliver and or your band has already proven it's worth more than $300, with a tone of gratitude, tell your booking contact, we're asking for $500. Again, put it out there and then shut up. Remember, the next person to speak loses. The venue comes back with, we can only pay up to $400. You might want to take this offer, or you can counter in increments of $25 or $50. In this case, I'd likely choose the increment of $50 and say, how about $450? Again, ask for the money and then keep your mouth shut. If this is all happening by email or text, don't add anything. Step away from the keyboard or put your phone away. You may get your $450. If not, you still want it $400. It's pretty simple, but you need two things going in your favor in order to pull this off. One, your band needs to have a great track record with the venue. And two, your venue contact needs to genuinely like you. These days, people are getting smarter about working only with people they like, trust, and respect. Don't be an ass. Gratitude is of the utmost importance. You should be grateful for the offer and say so. When you do, the venue will reciprocate with gratitude for a job well done. Oh, and by the way, if the numbers I'm using here make you want to stop reading, bear in mind that the numbers are relative. A full-time touring musician or 5-piece dance band may never play for these amounts. The bigger points are outside of the fees you're asking. Use common sense and adjust for your particular situation. The timing of asking for a raise comes into play when you're being asked to do a return engagement. You will better know if the time is right by finding out what other bands and artists are charging at the same venue. While not all bands are created equal, you should be able to get a good idea of what your band is worth. Be careful and keep your ego in check. Your ego might tell you that your band is worth more than it really is, or you may be inclined to undersell yourself and your bandmates. Again, it's helpful to know what your peers are asking. Some venues are going to be very set in what they pay. There may be little to no flexibility due to budget constraints of the venue. Know your venues by maintaining regular communication with your contacts. By regular communication, I mean reach out to them every few weeks or couple of months. Better yet, visit them in person. Ask them how things are going with the music program and life in general. Ask how other bands are working out for them and which bands are among their favorites. Venue contacts are generally forthcoming regarding budget constraints. Remember to also stay in tune with what other bands are experiencing with the same venues. One more word of caution. If a venue tells you that they only pay some specific amount, but you know on good authority that another band is getting more, I do not recommend calling their bluff, unless you're willing to damage the relationship by embarrassing your contact. At the very least, think carefully about what you're going to say in this situation. Every situation and relationship is different, but I would first consider doing a little homework to find out why another band is getting paid more. Are they drawing twice the audience that your band is? Are they a friend of the family or relative of the venue? There could be some other reason, but the most common one is the higher paid band is bringing in more people and helping the venue make higher sales and profit. I'm personally not overly focused on being paid what other bands are being paid. Granted, this is good information to know, but my band doesn't necessarily need to be paid the same as the next, depending on the venue and the situation. You've got to compare apples to apples, as the saying goes, when taking into account what other bands are being paid. Seasonal bookings can be ideal for seeking a raise. If you're being invited back for a second or third season of some annual festival or music series, chances are great that your band is looked upon very highly. Time to ask for a raise? Maybe. Depends. Again, know your venue and your contact. Yes, it's okay to negotiate or counteroffer, but be flexible and above all, be grateful. That's it, chapters 1 and 2 of the Unstarving Musician's Guide to Getting Paid Gigs. I was just looking at the published date. It was June 2nd, 2017. Almost 2 years ago. Today is the 31st of May as I'm recording this, and I noticed that that was published just one day before my wedding anniversary to my loving wife, soon to be up 25 years. I can't believe it. Where does the time go? It was exciting times publishing those episodes. I hope you enjoyed them, and I hope you will enjoy the additional chapters I'll be publishing right here for you soon. Ciao. Hey, thanks for listening. Question for you. Are you struggling to move your music journey forward? I can help, if not personally, then by referring you to the next best available resources. Schedule a free 15-minute call with me to find out if I can indeed help you. It's easy. Just visit unstarvingmusician.com/coaching to schedule your call today. Look for links to just about everything covered in this episode in the show notes at unstarvingmusician.com/podcast. This episode was powered by the Unstarving Musician's Guide to Getting Paid Gigs, how to get booked and paid what you're worth over and over again. It's available on paperback, Kindle, and ebooks just about everywhere you can find them. With much gratitude, peace, love, and more cowbell.